Good morning and welcome to the 16th Global Health Symposium, Fostering Resilience Through Indigenous Wisdom and Scientific Knowledge. I'm Jonathan Patz, Director of our university's Global Health Institute. We're hosting this day of global health with the Native American Center for Health Professions, based at the School of Medicine and Public Health. We are grateful for support from our Shared Future Heritage Marker Educational Innovation Grant, as well as an Indians in Educational Grant through the U.S. Indian Health Service. We also thank the EVU Foundation for their support of this event. And today, as we discuss multiple aspects of global health, we recognize the importance of the many ways of learning and knowing. Bringing together many voices, we explore the diversity of solutions to advance health for humans, animals, and the planet. I'm pleased to welcome leaders from Wisconsin's Native nations who will share the work they are doing to improve health and well-being. We also welcome a diverse group of physician panelists who will share their insights on how COVID has impacted them in the communities they serve in Madison and Milwaukee. Our keynote speaker, Maria Elena Wambachano, is an Indigenous scholar from the School of Human Ecology. She will join us from New Zealand, where she's been lecturing and working on a book to help in a Maori sustainable food garden. We also welcome almost 50 virtual poster presentations from faculty, staff, clinicians, and students at UW-Madison and the community. You'll hear from some of them in concurrent sessions this afternoon, and you'll have a chance to ask questions. We encourage you to remember to vote for the People's Choice Award for the Best Student Virtual Poster Presentation. You'll see the entries in your program. As we begin this symposium that intentionally brings together Indigenous wisdom and scientific knowledge, the Global Health Institute is also embarking on a journey to develop a land acknowledgement. It's part of our commitment to recognize and address institutional racism in all its forms, including the historical oppression and violence experienced by Wisconsin's Indigenous communities. The University of Wisconsin-Madison collaborated with the Ho-Chunk Nation to develop our Shared Future Heritage Marker. It recognizes the historical and contemporary impacts of colonialism and begins to acknowledge these are part of our ongoing relationship. The marker on Bascom Hill represents the university's commitment to respect the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation and other Native nations in Wisconsin. It was not meant to be a land acknowledgement, but encourages us to think about what we can do. The marker also gives us a brief history of this place. It is shaped by the colonialism that swept across Wisconsin and the world. UW-Madison is located on ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place called De Jope since time immemorial. In 1832, a treaty forced the Ho-Chunk to cede this territory, and the people of that sovereign nation faced decades of atrocities, ethnic cleansing, and forced removal. The state of Wisconsin and the university were established 16 years later. UW-Madison, like many other public institutions, was designated a land-grant university. The land the federal government granted, however, was forcibly taken from the Ho-Chunk, who had lived here for centuries. UW-Madison's Our Shared Future initiative calls on us to consider our shared past, present, and future with Indigenous peoples. GHI is looking toward writing a land acknowledgement that goes beyond words on a page, to consider on what we can act on, what's next. We recognize first that we need to do our homework, to read, watch, and listen to various resources, to learn about the Indigenous people and culture of this place. We hope also to celebrate the resilience of the Indigenous people and vibrant communities with whom we share this land. We're beginning our own inquiry with 4 questions based on those posed by the Native Governance Center in Minnesota. 1, why am I doing this land acknowledgement? 2, what is my end goal? 3, what do I want my audience to know or do after hearing the land acknowledgement? And 4, how does a land acknowledgement relate to my organization's mission? This symposium shows us the richness of collaborating with Indigenous leaders and scholars. We are honored that the Native American Center for Health Professions in the School of Medicine and Public Health has collaborated with us on today's event. We are grateful to be able to feature today some of Wisconsin's tribal leaders who are actively advancing health and well-being in their communities. This symposium is also partly funded through Our Shared Future Education Innovation Grant. Even as we celebrate this symposium, we realize we must consider what's next. What are our intentions for the future? How can we work toward decolonization and reconciliation? How do we leave Indigenous people more empowered through our land acknowledgement? What do we need to unlearn? What does it mean to be a good partner and neighbor to Wisconsin's 12 Native nations? We invite all of you to consider your relationship to the land you inhabit and the Indigenous people who live there. Take time to learn about the Indigenous history of your home. Maybe you want to write down your own land acknowledgement. We have included several resources in the program and the chat to get started. If you're in Madison, you might sign up for the First Nations cultural landscape tours at the university. Patty Lowe has written an excellent book, Indian Nations of Wisconsin, Histories of Endurance and Renewal. History of Endurance and Renewal. I work on renewable energy, so sorry. Histories of Endurance and Renewal, with a chapter about each of Wisconsin's 12 Native nations. Before we continue, please join me in a moment of silence to reflect on and honor the Indigenous people of this place and of the place where you are. So let's just pause for a minute. This is a day with many presentations, and we hope you will join us for as many as you can. Before I introduce our first speaker, let me share a few housekeeping details. Your electronic program will be your guide for the day, and where you will find links for every one of the sessions. You'll find it at go.wisc.edu/GHS, as in Global Health Symposium, GHS 2021. go.wisc.edu/GHS 2021. The sessions will be recorded if you miss any. We encourage you to keep your cameras on, although we ask that your microphones remain muted. Please feel free to participate and put your question in chat. Use the speaker view to help battle Zoom fatigue with all the many faces. And a reminder, we are on Central Time when you look at the schedule. And don't forget posting votes before 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. Central, you'll find the link in the chat to the posters so you can vote on People's Choice. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Brian McInnes, the Leona R. Culver Professor of Nonprofits and Philanthropy in the School of Human Ecology. He is an enrolled member of the Ojibwe Nation and direct descendant of the Wisconsin Potawatomi tribe. Dr. McInnes principally works in community-based language revitalization, oral history, and educational anthropology. His current research focuses on culture and language revitalization initiatives in northern Wisconsin. He also looks at holistic program evaluation for Indigenous language immersion schools and environmental change education. His 2017 book, Sounding Thunder, The Stories of Francis Pegamagabau, won an Amarian Book Award and also a Fred Langdon Award. So please help me welcome Dr. Brian McInnes, who will open our symposium with reflections on the event and also a traditional prayer. Brian?
Very good. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Jonathan. My name is Brian McInnes, and I have the extraordinary pleasure of being asked to do an opening here, I think, just to help begin things in this symposium in a good way. And I'm so honored and pleased to see that one of my colleagues, Dr. Marielena Huambachano from the School of Human Ecology, will be one of our featured speakers here today. I wanted to begin just by, reflecting again, and I so appreciated that task of each of us for a moment pausing and thinking of the place where we currently are, the place or perhaps the place where we come from, and the connection that we have to that land, to that territory, and what it is about that place that makes it so indelibly home, and whatever source of strength that we draw from that is, I think, very instrumental to how we think about health and well-being and our connection to the earth and the source of healing. I also just have the pleasure of introducing Arvina, who will be giving, one of the first talks here today. And just in kind of our preceding comments, she had mentioned that, she doesn't necessarily work in health. And I had to reflect upon that myself as well. I don't generally work in a health-related field, but have had, over the course of my life, the opportunity to work with many great healers, medicine people in community context. And I often think back to my home community. I am Ojibwe. I am a descendant of the Wisconsin Potawatomi tribe, but I did grow up for the first foundational parts of my life in Canada, in Ontario, at the Wasauksing First Nation, and was very privileged and lucky to be able to spend a lot of time with my grandparents, in particularly my grandmother, Priscilla King Pegamagabo, who was an absolute master speaker of Ojibwe, and who I, very much credit for much of the knowledge that I carry about language, about culture, but also she was an amazing and much understated, I would say, plant herbalist and medicine specialist. Not many people knew that about her, but her dedication to knowing the earth, building those kinds of relationships, and being able to share that gift with people was truly something that I always admired and always remember and always try to carry on the best way that I can. And to that end, I'm going to begin today by using one such plant medicine, and it's of all things in our Ojibwe language, and also in Potawatomi, we call this a sema. It's the English translation for that is tobacco. And it's very interesting when you think about that through the lens of a different language. When I hear that word said in my language, in Ojibwe, asema, what I think about is healing and medicine, and the polite and culturally respectful way to ask for help whenever help is required. When I hear the word tobacco, it just brings so many different images to my mind. I think Perhaps I think of the other side of that medicine. And it's one of the things about so many of our indigenous healing practices is we recognize the duality of those things, including that in as much on the one side you have the positive life-giving healing benefits of tobacco, you also know it can also do other things. So in a good way, thank you all so much for your kind patience and your kind regards. And in a good way, I will offer this asema, this tobacco, on all of our behalfs, and just ask for the assistance of wherever it is that we are speaking from, that we may also be inspired by the land in that place, by the spirit, by the healing energy of that place, to be able to bring all of that together in this truly amazing way that we have of communicating now, of somehow being together even though we are not, but still able to draw upon the strengths of the respective places where each of us are. One of the fundamental precepts, I think, that I just also wanted to just take a moment to share is that, for so many indigenous healing traditions around the world, one of the things we're taught is that, principally and sometimes only the only way that we can truly make medicine, meaning that which brings healing, that which brings life, that which brings renewal, can only be made in the place where we are, with that localized knowledge of plants, of traditions, of practices, and perspectives, what it is that we believe and know about healing practice. So bringing all of those things here together, I think can be a source of much inspiration and much possibility, but it's also a good reminder to wherever it is that we are doing our work, to be able to make those kinds of connections, learn those kinds of knowledge-based essentials, be able to develop those relationships with healers and practitioners, and be able, as we work with, our patients, with those who are in need of health, of wellness, of resilience, of strength, that we also be able to connect with traditions, the practices, the perspectives that they hold dear, and that those kinds of beliefs are also strengthened and encouraged, given acceptance, and therein given belonging. And I think that kind of unified perspective of working together to develop health in a global sense is a good way that we can all be able to find that way to value each other and be able to truly hear and accept each other. Many years ago, when I was at the University of Minnesota, I had the opportunity the invitation and opportunity from one of my colleagues there, Dr. Mary Owen, who runs one of the Native Americans in healthcare programs that helps train Indigenous students to be doctors, medical doctors. And one of the things that Mary had invited me to do was to speak to not just her Indigenous students at the beginning of their, medical training, but to speak to all of her students, all of the students, about some fundamental things that Indigenous peoples believe, and that might be helpful in creating this, kind of broad partnership and this community, this movement of changed health going forward into the future, one that is more inclusive, one that is, I think, more authentically related to what it is that Indigenous peoples believe and the authentic contributions that Indigenous health and wellness systems can make. I was also inspired very much by one of my wonderful colleagues when I was working in philanthropy, Dr. Kathy Annette, a native physician from Minnesota, who often, would talk about her role as a medical doctor, but also someone who worked very closely with Indigenous healers and Indigenous spiritual practitioners in learning about the ceremonies of birth, of life, and of death, and the pathway that transitions from either side of those things and goes forever. But what we were able to see in some of those conversations and talks is that there are some wonderful and demonstrated examples of physicians and healthcare practitioners who are able to work side by side with Indigenous practitioners. But of course, that takes listening, that takes learning, that takes conversation. And I think what we see happening here through this very symposium is that exact thing that needs to continue to happen for everyone to authentically know, understand, and be a part of the establishment of that good life practice, that Mino Bimadaziwin Ikewin. So in a good way, I just wanted to thank all of you for allowing me just to talk about those fundamental things, be able to share some of those examples. And I think now my most important role, other than being able to ask for a good blessing and a good opening, is to do a very important introduction here. So in that good spirit, I will introduce Arvina Martin. I do see her on my scrolling um, gallery here. And the introduction I would like to make is just to also acknowledge her membership as a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the Ho-Changra people, the people of the sacred voice. And Arvina was elected as a first Indigenous alder on the Madison Common Council in 2017. She has served as a policy analyst and a statewide tribal liaison for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. She has also served as a voter protection fellow, an American Indian outreach coordinator and communications intern for the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, and the chief communications officer for the Ho-Chunk Nation legislature. So it is my profound honor to be able to introduce her and to welcome her voice, her sacred voice to this conversation. So Pinigigi Arvina, thank you.
Pinigigi, thank you so much, Brian, for your words and setting us off and setting off this day in a good way. And I really very much appreciate the wisdom and the words that you shared with us today, as well as the prayer that you offered. So thank you, Pinigigi, again. Before I start here, I'm gonna grab myself a drink of water because I'm gonna speak a little Ho-Chunk, and I need to make sure I have some moisture in order to pronounce things correctly. So with that, Haini P, Hini Karagiwi, Maikete Razra, Arvina Martinga Higaire, Ho-Chunk Razra, Hohamchi Kerega Higaire, Wonagire, Wakshik Yakikara, Chwawanje. Greetings. My English name is Arvina Martin. My Ho-Chunk name is Hohamchi Kerenga, which is the lightning in the distance that lights up the sky. And I am also a member of the warrior clan within the Ho-Chunk Nation. I am unbelievably honored to be joining you all here at this global symposium, Fostering Resilience Through Indigenous Wisdom and Scientific Knowledge. I want to thank the Global Health Initiative and the Native American Center for Health Professions as well. Pinigigi to you and to all of you here for the important work that you do, and again for inviting me to join you all for today's events. As I said, my name is Arvina Martin. I'm a lifelong Madisonian and an enrolled member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I'm also Stockbridge Munsee. I've spent my career working in politics and engaging Native people in the political process. I have worked on the last 3 presidential campaigns, both in Native American outreach, getting folks to the polls, making sure people know what they need to do in order to vote, and as along those lines as well, voter protection, making sure that people throughout the state as well, especially Native people, have the information that they need so that they can feel empowered to go to the polls and cast their ballots for the candidates of their choice. I've also worked to strengthen the government to government relationships between tribal nations and governments at the local, state, and federal level. As Professor McInnes mentioned, in 2017, I ran for office myself after working on campaigns for quite a while. And I ran for and was elected to Madison's Common Council. And as he mentioned, I was the first Native person elected to serve in that body. Sometimes people like to say, oh, she's the first woman, but there has not yet been a man to serve, a Native man to serve on the Common Council too. So man or woman, I got that, which is an unbelievable honor. And I still, if you can tell when I think about it, I still get a little bit emotional. I think about what this area has been, and that my ancestors and our families have lived here for time immemorial, and representing that past, representing our present here as Ho-Chunk people, as Native people in Madison, and representing our future generations that will be living here and elsewhere. This is incredibly important to me, and I do feel that this role is and this work is also a tremendous responsibility. And I am very happy to kind of take on that responsibility. As a city council member, you know, of course, I am responsible for representing the constituents in my district. But again, like I said, I know that my lived experience, my education, and my job experience means that I do have that responsibility to other Native people here in Madison, past, present, and future. Most of the time, what that means is that I hear about an issue, or we're discussing something related to the city, and I bring up something that how it relates to Native people here, how it relates to the Ho-Chunk Nation as a community, as a culture, and as a government. And you know, then I talk through issues with city staff, perhaps other alders, and the mayor, to make sure that the things that we are doing are responsible to all of those that I mentioned previously. You know, I have to make sure that I ask questions as well. I have to bring in other Native people who are experts, and of course, not just Ho-Chunks, because not just Ho-Chunks live here in Madison. We all know that. It's really important to me to not just create that dialogue and make people start thinking about it, and people start talking about this kind of stuff, but also to make policy that will work for the people in this city, whether they are Native or not, and making policy that will work for the Ho-Chunk Nation, and properly consult in a good government to government way. And again, that work is really, really, really important, and has not been done in the majority of spaces in governments, or in a lot of professional fields, which is why a conference like this, a symposium like this, is so very important into bringing our ways of thinking into our professions. Like I said, I started this portion of my talk by introducing myself in my Ho-Chunk language. And I'm very, very happy that Professor McInnes talked about the importance of hearing our languages, and again, offering words in his language in prayer for all of us here today. As you also probably could tell, I'm at the beginning of my language journey. I am currently in our language class level 1, so I'm learning a lot of the basics, and it's really, really hard. I'm extremely grateful that we have the opportunity to learn virtually with teachers from our language department, and that way, you know, even though I'm not in Black River Falls or Wisconsin Dells or Toma, I can still work and learn learn my language. For those of you who may have have started to learn your languages, you know that it can be really difficult. It's not like being in school where you take Spanish every day, or French or something like that, a language that may be related to English and has similar grammar, verb tenses, and things like that. This is all completely different. Our sentences are not structured the same way. Our words aren't conjugated the same way. But I do think that it's important for me not only to practice, but to share what our language sounds like to people that may not know. I also think that learning language is a way for us to learn about our traditional worldviews, and in my case, you know, a Ho-Chunk way of speaking. Just hold on one second. In our class, we've started learning about our Ho-Chunk kinship systems, which are very different from the way that the Western world determines who your family is, who your close relatives are. For example, in our Ho-Chunk kinship system, your mother's mothers are also your mothers. Their kids are your siblings. Your father's brothers, are also your fathers. Again, their kids are also your siblings. Back in the day, this had a practical application in that if something happened to your parents, whether, accidentally or through illness or, something else, injury, that you were still part of a family and you had people that would take care of you. That really expands the notion of family, and I think is a very good example of how our language helps inform us of how of Ho-Chunk ways of thought and worldviews. Our concept of family is far larger than again the Western world's concept of family. I think that, to me, it also is really important to remember that that's the way that we traditionally think, and reminding ourselves of that, because not only does that make your family bigger, but it makes the rest of the world, and in this case, the Ho-Chunk Nation, smaller, because you're related to so many people. And I'm sure that that is something that is similar across not just Ho-Chunks, but across Native families throughout the Americas. And then that makes you think, and it makes me think, in my particular role, that we're bringing what we believe is family, or what our views of family, and making our world kind of smaller because we're related to so many people. And then you feel the responsibility towards your relatives in ways that many people don't feel about, say, strangers. And if you're thinking about, hey, there are so many relatives I have that I don't even know, I've never met. And when they see me, they greet me, oh, hey, Chujang. And then I know, oh, okay, that's one of my relatives. It makes it a lot easier to visualize and plan for, and give you the sense that we need to look out for each other, because the generic phrase, we're all in this together, is really, really, really relevant at this point in time. So I think about this a lot, and especially now that I've started this language class, and thinking about how learning my language is leading me back to thinking about traditional solutions to problems that we currently face, which brings us to today. So 2020, it was pretty crazy. A vast understatement. It would be an understatement to say that we have just experienced one of, if not the most challenging years that we will ever live through. Now, I know that we've heard a lot of hot takes from pundits and social media and friends and relatives, but I do think that looking back retrospectively, and kind of going through what we did, what has happened, to see what we can take from this unprecedented time. We not only experienced a global pandemic, but we're also navigating a kind of social justice reckoning that we are currently going through, beginning with the murder of George Floyd. The trial for the officer who killed him is happening now, and now the unthinkable killing of another young Black man at a traffic stop is really making, and I wish it would make more people think, but a lot of us are thinking about these things, and it seems like a lot of times we're not making enough progress on either this pandemic, or this way that we look at our neighbors and other people that we share society with. But it also makes us think about what normal is, and people frequently talk about, well, when we get back to normal, we don't want normal to be what it was before anybody had ever heard of COVID-19. We are thinking about how we make that normal better, and how we make that normal better for more people, and accessible to as many people as we can. And so that when the time comes that we're getting closer and closer to every day, when we can be around each other again, that it is a society that is healthier, a society that is more just, and a society that takes ideas that are outside of Western concepts generally into consideration and validity, which is what this whole symposium is about our traditional knowledge, of the resiliency of us as Native people, and the wisdom that we might not even know we have, but we do, and how we can use that to heal, to help people get better and take care of themselves, and not just don't get sick or prevent COVID, but looking at everybody as a whole person who has the physical health needs, who has emotional, mental health needs, as well, as spiritual needs. Of course, in city government, we have to deal with a lot of the same questions and problems. We are looking at how to keep people safe and healthy from a virus that we knew very, very little about when it first started to impact us. I am so grateful for those, the researchers, the scientists, and the doctors that have been doing research on this, so we know more and are able to practice better prevention habits, as well as get better, as well as develop vaccines that can help prevent the spread of this virus. One thing that I've seen as we progress through this year is that since we're all so isolated, people are looking in different ways to connect themselves to others, which I think is very important, and I'm sure I can get some agreement here, to our collective mental health and spiritual health. It was kind of easier when things first started, first of all, because it had only been like 2 weeks or a month, and we thought, oh, by summer it'll be back to normal. But it was also nice out, so we could go out on walks. We could go take a hike in a park, or go just be outside. The out of doors offered us a lot more opportunities for recreation, for getting outside, from seeing your friend maybe 10 feet away and kind of waving at them and being able to talk to them, even though you really just wanted to give them a hug. When it got cold last winter, things started to get a little more stressful, because we did not have the same option of having a picnic in the backyard 10 feet away from a friend or something like that. And some of the mental health, the depression, the anxiety started to grow in a lot of folks. And I know that I was trying to find new ways to be active and to keep my mind and my body and my soul healthy. I picked up ice skating, which I know how to roller skate, but ice skating is way hard, especially with hockey skates, because unlike quad roller skates, which I normally use, ice hockey skates don't have toe stops or tips. So there was a lot of falling, but I did it. I tried it, trying new things. Yeah. That was a side. But I had come back to a conversation that I had the previous winter. So in 2019, I had reached out to Bill Quackenbush, who is the Ho-Chunk Nation's historic preservation officer. And he had put on some games, one called Snow Snake, which, if you are not familiar, Ho-Chunk people play it. Iroquois are credited with creating it. I think if you go along the entire Great Lakes region, you'll find many, many tribes that play Snow Snake. If you're not familiar, it involves a great big ramp made out of snow, maybe comes between waist and chest high at the top, and it can be 400 plus feet long. And this ramp has a track in the center, kind of dug out. And then you take your snake which is in this case a long wooden stick, maybe like a broomstick, although many people make their own and they're gorgeous. They're different shapes. Some are tapered at an end. Lots of them have beautiful art on them. They're just wide and varied as the people that make them. I'd asked him if he could help me, if we could put on a snow snake event. We were really excited. We were going to do it. And then it rained and melted all the snow 3 days before we were going to have the event. Boo. So I came back to that thought and asked Bill if he would come down to Madison this winter, so the winter of 2020 and 2021, to do the same thing. I also reached out to the city's parks department saying, hey, this is something that I want to do. This is what we need. Do we have any city parks that could fit this? And our parks department director, Eric Knepp, said to me, yes, Warner Park, this is an awesome idea. Can we do that? Can this be a parks event? And I was so excited because now it wasn't just me who was doing it. You know, this was going to be a city event. I was unbelievably excited that we got to do that. Bill came down and helped us build the track. And he brought down some of the snakes, the sticks that he has, and the Parks Department bought a bunch of broomsticks. And we had kind of a trial run on a Saturday. We got people who were coming from ice skating or snowshoeing or cross-country skiing through the park who were stopping to say, what are you guys doing? And we taught them how to play. The following Saturday, we had the official event, which was a competition and lasted all day. We had participants who were adults, we had children, and we had a bunch of people who came through and had seen us the first time and had come back to Warner Park to practice so that they could play on Saturday and win a prize. It was so cool. And I think one of my favorite parts of this is when we had first started and it was just me and Bill and the park staff that helped build. They were trying it out and it soon, you know, it went from nobody knowing what this game was about to people starting to tease each other and be like, oh man, you know, I threw mine 297 feet, you know, and yours jumped off the track at 15. Ha ha ha. And it was like, it happened so fast. The game is easy to learn and doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take much equipment. It doesn't cost a lot. And the Parks Department was so happy with how this turned out and how much fun that they had that they decided that a snow snake will be a part of Madison Park's winter amenities offered in several parks every year. So now we've taken an ancient game that, you know, we were looking for things to do, just desperate to get out of the house. And we found this game with that is part of our collective culture and part of the culture of Madison, pre-contact and I suppose post-contact as well. But now this is a game that people are going to be playing in parks in the future. And to me, that is a really big deal. This was a way that we were able to teach culture and teach people about us and about us as Ho-Chunks and as Native people, but it wasn't heavy-handed. You know, it was, here's this thing, come enjoy it with us. And when people were leaving our event, I could hear kids asking their parents, okay, so now we got to get some sticks. Did they tell you how to wax it up? Let's make our own sticks. And a group of dads standing there saying, yeah, well, I think if I pick up some maple, I could, you know, do this. And I've got the sander, maybe some paraffin wax. Yeah, this immediately became part of what they're anticipating now for winters again. And I think that's kind of a microcosm of experiences that we have experienced during the pandemic. We've seen so many Native people returning and relying on traditions that they might not have done previously, or maybe they did when they were kids and starting up again. I don't know about you guys, but my Facebook feed has been filled with people sharing beadwork, sharing their processes as they tan hides, or I just saw a video yesterday produced by the Ho-Chunk Language Department depicting some of my relatives gathering maple sap and their process for making maple syrup. This could also be something like learning about the seasonal edible plants and medicine that our ancestors used to harvest, and we can collect them for our tables today. What this shows to me is that we as Native people know how and are able to keep our traditions alive. We are resilient. And so many of us will go back to what we know and make sure that it has a place in our lives and the lives that we live today. And sometimes it's just like an automatic thing. We don't even realize what we're doing it. We are just doing what we may normally do, maybe with a little bit extra. To think about that, and then to think about the fact that we have Native people in every professional field means that we have traditions that we can find and put them in our fields and share them with our professional fields and share their value and their importance to what we do. When I think that sometimes when non-natives think about our traditions and our knowledge, they think about it as something quaint or outdated. But when we show them what it actually means and what it actually entails, their eyes open and they can actually see and understand what we're doing. And then they start to see their place in our world today. One more example before I finish that I want to bring up, which has stuck with me, is about last year's fires in, I almost said Atlanta, Australia. They were in Australia. We all saw pictures of the devastation that happened. It affected so much of the country. But when the fires were stopping and they stopped, officials noticed that a lot of the land that was managed by Aboriginal Australians was nowhere near as damaged as the lands that were managed according to mainstream conventions. The Australian government, I believe, even created a commission to study the potential of incorporating Indigenous land management into their country nationwide policies. The Aboriginal knowledge in the way that they manage their lands and kind of the selective burning that they did for fire prevention not only helped prevent a lot of the damage due to the fires, but they also were able to benefit the wildlife and sustain a greater degree of biodiversity in that particular area. So this is real, and we know this is real. Other people are finally starting to see that this is real. So our communities, our nations, our tribes, we all have a wealth of knowledge that is just waiting to be acknowledged. We have it. So I want to take a second to propose a call to action to you all. You all who have that traditional knowledge, and the wisdom and the traditions that we still have today, use them to improve the health of your patients. Use our traditions that look at the whole person and not just as someone in front of you who has symptoms. Like I said before we even started, and it was referenced by Professor McInnes, I don't work in health, but I do know that there are ways, traditional healing ways that we have that do take care of that whole person and not just symptom management. And those are very, very important to the well-being of everybody. You know, take the opportunity if it's your field to study the relationship of traditional healing of all aspects of a person, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. The other ways are more up my alley, and for folks that may not work in health, this is an opportunity to organize. What that means to you, it may be different from what that means to me. Maybe you see a piece of legislation that is going through the state or federal or even at a local level, and you have a response either in support or against that particular piece of legislation. Talk to your elected officials, write them letters, make phone calls, send emails about the importance, go to committee hearings and testify if you are able. The testimony that we give is very impactful. And I know from many lawmakers that have heard testimony from Native people about things like this, they come away almost shaken, thinking, I'd never thought about anything like this before. We can do that. We can open eyes and share what we can in order to make our world a better place. And the last part about organizing is thinking about, again, the people around you, thinking about your family, whether it is family in the Western concept of it or family in a larger, maybe Ho-Chunk way of thinking of family where you're related to almost everybody. And think about all the people that could be impacted. What is it that you want to do? What message do you want to send? How are you going to accomplish that? Do you want to bring visibility to something? Maybe something like hosting a rally or putting together videos, or what my daughter would be embarrassed if I say this, but maybe make a TikTok challenge or something. Get to the young people too. Do you want to pass or stop legislation? Organize around that. Get all of your friends, get your relatives, get your colleagues to think about what you're talking about, and really fine tune your message to be pro or anti, or just bringing up a new idea entirely. Think about the skills that you have, not only as a professional, as a person who has skills to heal people and make people feel better. Are you good at public speaking? That's a great way. You can speak at a rally, help put together a rally. Maybe you record yourself and put it on Facebook or TikTok again, and just get that word out there. Are you good at art? Art is a great way to share ideas and to begin organizing. Think about who feels the same way as you. Think about how you want to affect the change, and think about the ways that you want to do it. Those goals you put together, and you can create your own movement. We are all absolutely capable of this. We all have voices that are not heard in the mainstream regularly. So think about your voice. Think about those traditions that you have within you, the traditions that your elders carry, and the ones that are appropriate to incorporate in health or whatever field you're in. Push it. We absolutely can do this. And creativity is huge. The more creative that you make your efforts, the more attention you get, the more attention people pay to that. And then, of course, research. That is this kind of publicity and this voice makes people think, maybe we should be looking into this. Maybe we should have a study on this. And all of a sudden, money goes to your research.
You're getting all sorts of great comments coming in.
I'm not even looking.
And
that is actually, I mean, that's my call to action. This is the time we can remake our new normal after this into something completely different than what we experienced before. Pinigigi, so much for your time, for your attention, and for letting me ramble. Hani Chakjawi.
So thank you so much, Arvina Martin. You've given us a lot to ponder as we move forward. I personally see huge value in the Ho-Chunk model of family for so many reasons. You know, we indeed need to recognize just how interconnected each of us truly is. So thank you for that perspective. We're grateful for the time that both you and Dr. McInnes have spent with us. And the symposium now continues at 12 noon. So that's a couple minutes from now. And so with the next panel discussion, after you've maybe taken a break, but we're not going to really break, you just can step away and come right back. This panel discussion is Indigenous Knowledge, Wisdom, and Resilience, Perspectives from Wisconsin Native Nations. You'll find the Zoom link in the panel in your program. Thank you for joining us this morning, and I look forward to seeing you again throughout the day. Don't forget to vote for the best student poster by 2 p.m. And just a reminder that we'll announce the winners at 6:45, just before our keynote speaker. So just take a pause. We'll come back in 1 minute to start the next panel. So just take a 1 minute break and don't go away.